You've learned how to round corners on layers, but often you'll want to create a particular shape. And this is when you'll use a CA shape layer. You draw shapes using paths, and in this video we'll take a look at how to do that. When you want to draw a shape, you use UI Bezier path. You can use UI Bezier path to create a CA shape layer or draw a core graphics path, so it does double purpose. In the previous video, we used UIimage.cg image and UIcolor.cg color. Similarly, when we allocate paths to CA shape layers, because UI Bezier path is part of UIKit, we use a CG path property on UI Bezier path. Paths consist of lines and curves which can join together to make a path. A path on its own doesn't do very much. It's just an abstract shape. But you can set a shape layer with this path, and then you can define a stroke along the path, and also fill paths with a colour.
So let's open up the starter playground and do some drawing. All we need is UIKit, and I've set up a live view so that we can play with some CA layers. Open the Assistant Editor to see the live view. Let's set up a simple path so that you can see how paths work. We'll create a CA shape layer in the view. And we'll create a new path. When you create a new path, you can specify the type of path it is. Whether it's a rectangle or an oval or an arc. We'll start with a circle or an oval. Here I've created a rectangle of 200 by 200, and the circle's going to be that size within that rectangle. I'll assign this path to the CA shape layer. And it's a core graphics path because it's core animation. And now we've got that circle. I'll change that to be a color fill. And now the circle's yellow. And we'll add an outline. And you might be able to see here that the outline is cut off at the edges. I'll increase the line width so that you can see that better. The stroke is centered on the outside of the circle. So half of the stroke is on the inside of the circle and half of the stroke is on the outside. I generally deal with this by insetting the CG Rect by half the line width. So that's taken the 200 by 200 rectangle and inset it by 3 to allow for the line width. So now the layer is still at the edges of the view, but inset. Instead of a circle path, let's draw a more complex path. Let's add a line to the path. We first move to a point and then add a line to another point. And there's the line. Now we can just keep adding points to the path. Notice how the fill color works. It tries to fill using the start and the end points. I could close the path using path close. But that's not much fun, so I'll get rid of that. And down at the bottom of the playground, I've placed some code that I'm going to copy and uncomment it using Command/. You can probably see where I'm going with this path now. The complicated bit is a curve to finish off this logo. Here I continued the path to the first point, which is x5, y5. The curve is a Bezier curve, And the control point is not actually on the curve, but it controls the curve. The control point is at 105.5, which is about here, and it pulls the line from here up to here into a curve. That's actually a bit far, so I'll change the X value to 95. You can spend a lot of time tweaking paths. And now we'll close the path. You don't always want these square edges when you're drawing the path on the shape layer, so you can change how you join the lines using the line join. And you can choose between bevel, mitered or round. We're going to choose round. And that's slightly curved all the edges. Let's have a look now at how to position this shape layer within the view.
You move shape layers using the position property. This is a layer at position 0, 0. However, the position is not the only thing that affects the position of a layer. You also have to take into account the layer's anchor point property. The anchor point is a value on X and Y of between 0 and 1. 0.5 is the default and is in the center. The anchor point is the rotation point for the layer. If we were to rotate the layer using a transform, it would rotate around the center. If I change the anchor point to 0, 0, as well as having a position of 0, 0, the top left of the layer will now be at the top left of the view. If you were to rotate the layer at this point, it would rotate around the anchor point at the top left. However, it's quite useful to position layers using their center, so unless you're doing off-center rotation, then leave the anchor point at 0.5.
Back in the playground, let's find out the current position and anchor point of the layer. The shape layer position is at 0, 0 and the anchor point is at 0.5, 0.5. But the shape layer isn't off the view as I showed you in the slide because shape layers don't actually have a size. I can fix that by giving the shape layer the same size as the path. And the layer is now at the default position as I showed you in the slide at the top left. Let's now center the logo. And the shape layers move to the center of the view. Now let's add another layer and add it to the layer hierarchy. And we'll color it blue. You can see that the layer is mostly off the edge of the view, so we'll move it to the center, which is where the shape layer is. It's in the wrong order, so I have two choices. I can, instead of adding the sublayer here, I can insert it. But let's just undo that. CA layers also have a Z position property so that you can order your layers however you like. I'll give the shape layer a Z position of 10 and the new layer a Z position of 5, which will be behind 10. And that's reordered the rendering order of the layers. So now you know how to create paths and position layers, so let's move on to creating a custom control.